and kick this one off. Alfred Howard, how are we doing today, man?
Doing pretty good, brother. Yourself?
Doing real good, man. I know we got a little, for those watching this, there's a little glare on the screen right now. I think we're being joined by a spirit or something. So
Excellent. I
hopefully,
have a ghost podcast that I can send this into.
yeah,
Get
there you
some
go.
of that
There you go.
ghost traction.
Well, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about you, and then we'll just jump into it, man.
All right. My name is Alfred Howard. I have a project called Alfred Howard Writes, and that's Writes. Basically, I'm writing and releasing 2 songs a week. My mother is a watercolor painter. She does an original piece of art for each song. And I also write a short story, either about like what's going on in the week or a little bit of background about the song. I'm providing lyrics for all these songs, and their collaborations with a number of musicians that I've met over 20 years of touring.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And we were in my house. I got some records going on behind me and a weird glare that kind of enhances my beard from the right angle. And I'll go with that. That's fine. Looks like I've been growing it for a lot longer. Like I have a nice full quarantine beard.
Yeah.
Where I have a regular sad beard.
Sad quarantine beard.
Yeah.
Oh man. So where did this idea come from? It seems very specific.
You know, the funny thing is, so I've been playing music for a really long time. I was writing lyrics for 8 different bands and performing live in 5 bands before quarantine. Also, I've had chronic Lyme disease for 26 years of my life, and it was starting to make the performance aspect of it like really difficult. And before COVID hit, I was thinking about taking a little step away from music. And then I got to take a step away from music, sort of unplanned, you know?
Right.
And I had a little bit of downtime. And it's funny because downtime like makes you miss something, you know? So I was like, oh, well, I still want to do music. I still want to be involved in music in some way, shape, or form. So I started to kind of try to navigate how that could be. So I was like, I started writing songs. I would write a song a day, and I would post on Facebook and invite people to do renditions of it. And I'd get some people doing versions back. And, you know, it's always interesting when you put something out there like that you've created, and you might have like a certain vision for it in your head or like a way that it would sound. And then someone brings back something totally different. And there's like an awesomeness to that, you know, most of the time. And then sometimes you're like, oh, you know, it's like letting someone else raise your children, you know, and then your child comes back addicted to crack and you're like, oh, that's not great. You know,
that didn't work out like
that's not how I wanted it to go, you know? So after I did that for, I think like 29 days, and it was also just a good challenge as a writer to like be able to come up with something different every day. And, you know, especially in times like this where there's just so much to like reflect on and respond to.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's something to this idea. And I was like, I bet there's a way I could refine it. So I started the website, and it's a subscription-based site. So, you know, you can pay monthly, or you can pay for the whole year. Or the way I've set it up is you could not pay at all, you know, because I know a lot of people are like out of work right now, or, you know, unemployment's starting to shift a little bit. So, you know, if someone can pay, they pay, and that kind of balances out for someone who wants like a free subscription, you know?
Yeah.
But what I started to do was just target either people that I've always wanted to create with, some people who I've already worked with. And then, you know, some of these people would be like kind of dream collaborations, you know, that I'm holding my fingers to see if they come through. But I know that a lot of musicians have downtime right now. So this is like a good time to be doing something like this, you know?
Yeah.
At the same time, it's a terrible time to start a new business. So it's like, it's an interesting little seesaw to be on, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it might be a good time to start a business depending on how it goes and where the time frame does shift to. But,
Yeah.
You know, that'll remain to be seen.
Well, it's one of those things like this would have never happened without a global pandemic. And I'm not in any way thankful for a global pandemic to get here, you know? I wish that it was a simpler push to start my own business, you know?
Yeah.
But it is, you know, it is what it is, unfortunately. but you know what I mean. This is where we're at, and you know, you kind of have to be adaptable and malleable to the current situation. And like, you know,
Change.
for me, it's like a way that I can continuously like create and be artistic, be involved in music, but not compromise, you know, some of the health limitations that I have with the Lyme disease, not be out in bars late at night, you know, not be like beating up myself and my joints, you know, like I'm a writer first and foremost. That's like my biggest contribution to the music arena.
Gotcha. Um, I definitely want to get into a little bit more about what you got going on right now, but I wanted to actually talk to you about Lyme's disease and how that's affected you over the years. How old were you when you got it?
I was 16,
Okay.
and it was over the summer, and it was really weird because I remember I woke up one morning and I couldn't bend my right wrist, you know, and it was just like stuck in this position, and it was just really really kind of weird. And I went to the doctor's, and he was trying to bend it, and he was like, "Oh, your wrist is broken." And I was like, you know, I I think I'd know if I, you know, broke my wrist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I guess I was a 16-year-old boy, so I could have like done something, you know. But like, I feel like I would have remembered it, you know.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I don't think my wrist is broken, you know. And then they wound up doing some blood tests, and it came back that I had Lyme disease. And I remember being devastated because like at that time, I didn't know. I just thought Lyme disease was something that killed you. I didn't know very much about it, so I was like, I thought that it was like a death warrant, and I was like, oh my God, Mom, I'm gonna die. And I like had a big meltdown, like cry, and then she's like, no, you're just gonna be in pain for a while. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that.
Okay.
So, you know, like for some people get treatment. I was on like a pretty heroic dose of antibiotics, and a lot of the symptoms subsided for like a really long time, and then they kind of came back for me, and then they never like completely went away. So I have like a chronic form of it. So I get a lot of joint pains, and it's kind of cyclical. Like I'll have like 4 to 6 weeks of like relative comfort, and then like the same, just real sluggish fatigue, joint problems.
Wow. And it's just kind of like clockwork like that at this point.
Yeah. But you know, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that aspect of it until I went to see a specialist maybe like 10 years ago. And just knowing that one simple thing that I learned there like changed my life, because you can kind of prepare, or when you start to feel it coming on, you're like, all right, well, I know that this isn't permanent, you know. You know, because like I used to try to figure out like, oh, what is it that I ate that was like, you know, creating this circumstance, or did I do something that created this response? And then just knowing that it was just a simple cycle, you know, just helped me be prepared, and you know, not be so disappointed when it happened, you know.
Yeah. How did you deal with it when you first started going through the waves with it? You know, I can't imagine that's an easy thing for a 16-year-old to live with.
Yeah, the funny, because that summer was really difficult. Like after the wrist injury, there was another one where it was my elbow, and I couldn't move my whole elbow. And I haven't had problems like that since then.
Mhm.
But you know, this is 26 years ago. A lot of it's hard to remember. You know, you when you're young like that, you kind of just fight through it because you know your will to be a child and like be out there and biking and playing is a pretty strong thing, man. Lyme disease wasn't going to stop me from getting out there and hurting myself on my bike, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was like just really disheartening at first, and then once I realized it wasn't like the end of my world, you just kind of roll with it, you know. And that's kind of been my mentality like since then, you know. It's
Gotcha.
like this is a thing that I deal with, but everybody's got something that they deal with, and you know, on the scale of things, this isn't that bad.
Gotcha. Man, I wonder if it's because when you got it, because like I think about that sometimes, like how I used to be a lot more fearless when I was younger. You know, it used to be like, you know, any type of sport, anything you're throwing back and forth, it's like there's not a whole lot of fear there because you haven't broken a lot of stuff and scraped a bunch of stuff. And
Yeah.
until that starts to happen, you see the consequences. You're like, oh, there's stuff you got to look out for here.
Oh yeah, now I'm fearful of everything.
Yeah.
if I'm walking off a curb and it's like particularly high, I'm like, all right, let me think. How do I want to navigate this? You
Oh
know,
my gosh, yeah.
not trying to like I have like lower back issues sometimes, and like I've sneezed wrong and been like, oh okay, that's gonna cost me 3 days of my life. So I try to prepare these. I was working at this record store in Ocean Beach for a while, and these young kids came in and they were fans of the music, and they're like, well, how old are you? I was like, oh, I'm 42. And they're like, whoa, you're 42? Because apparently like I look younger than 42. I don't think that, but someone's told me that.
I think you look younger than 42.
All right, I'll take it. And thank you.
Yeah.
But these young kids were like, so what, as a musician, we play in a band, like, what can you tell us? And I was like, like I had some elder wisdom to bestow on them. And I was like, listen, like when you turn 40 and you have to sneeze real bad, like you might want to just grab the counter and prepare for the sneeze. That's like the only wisdom I could give you. They're like, that doesn't have anything to do with music. I'm like, bro, that has everything to do with music. Like one day you're going to sneeze hard and you're going to be like, man, that guy gave me this advice when I
it's
was
going to click and they're going to be like,
17.
oh, whoa.
Yeah. It's like a long-term payoff for that like little wisdom I gave them, but it's going to be great when it comes to them,
Absolutely. Just plant
Yeah.
that seed.
Yeah. And I was like, get arch supports. If you have flat feet, get arch supports. They're like, okay, this conversation turned weird.
Right.
I thought you were going to tell me about what kind of drugs to try and stuff. I'm like, nope. No, just prepare for sneezes, get arch supports, lift with your knees,
Yeah.
lift with your legs,
It changes as you get older, I promise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with that, like, I'm curious about the touring life, man. Like you toured for 20 years with a bunch of different bands.
Yeah. Yeah. Early on we toured a lot more extensively. There was a band called Alfred Howard and the K-23 Orchestra. And that was like a past life because I was the frontman of that band. I used to do spoken word poetry with like a 6-piece psychedelic jazz funk band. And at the end of that, we were together for 7 years. And it's funny because we had just like invested we put a lot of money into a record. We bought a van. We were like getting serious. We were touring all over the place. And I totally lost my voice. And it was like the timing of it was pretty brutal, because like we were talking earlier, like I had a certain kind of guilt that I carried with me for that because we were a band. We were the same members for a really long time. And we were kind of all invested in this thing that we believed in. And then all of a sudden this ingredient that was like a key ingredient of it, like just didn't function anymore. But I just, I just kept doing it because, our lives were like based around this thing, So I toured for another 2 years and just continued to like blow out my voice even worse. I had a hiatal hernia, and just like these other things I could tell young folks that they don't tell you, like when you're growing up. But like after a gig we'd eat like a burrito at 2 a.m, which like when you're like 20 years old it's no big deal. But then
Right.
I had the stomach acids kind of like scarring up the lining of my esophagus. On top of that, we were doing like 2-3 hour shows every night, and like I'm just trying to project over this band, and it just I totally lost my voice. But the crazy thing is, it's like for me creatively, that was like the best thing that ever happened, because like I never really enjoyed that position in the band. It was just sort of by virtue of necessity. I prefer to write. So after like taking a year off and my voice never quite getting back to where it was, I still wanted to have something to do with music. So I started writing lyrics for other singers, who are much better singers than I ever was. I was never much of a singer. I could just like speak really fast. That was like my whole thing with the band.
Gotcha.
And like some of the songs I wrote in my first band were like really kind of, they were more poems than anything, real long-winded, didn't necessarily have a chorus, and writing songs kind of forced me to refine that. And I found it a lot like easier for me to do that and just kind of take that route and sort of like try to paint with different people's voices. And then I wound up writing lyrics for, I think I put out 30 albums as of this year. It'll be 30 records. And, most of which I don't do vocals on. And, yeah, I like it because I never have to listen to my voice because I hate the sound of it, which is really nice. It's hard. I can't listen to any of those early records, just for like nostalgic purposes, because it would kill me probably. But I actually enjoy the music I've made like since then. So it's pretty, it's refreshing to be able to like go back and listen and be like, oh, I like this. This doesn't hurt me.
Yeah. Man, it is crazy how the changes that end up benefiting us in a good way. Like we always want change when something's not going right, or when something's not working out, but it always shows up in a way that we don't expect, because
Right.
it's like, who would have thought that to get to a place of finding out that you're brightened up by being more behind the scenes and writing the lyrics, is you're going to have to lose your voice.
Right. Yeah, it caught me off guard. And I was miserable when it was happening. Like
Of course.
I was really depressed, and like, cause I would still do the shows, and after the show, any kind of venue you're in, any bar where there's like a lot of people in there, it's loud, and like when I was on stage, I had monitors, I had sound coming back to me, so I could be whisper quiet, and the sound man's pushing my voice above the band. So that could kind of work. But then as soon as I didn't have a sound man, I just had to like have a conversation with someone. Like I couldn't do that. There'd be like house music playing in the club, and there'd be people conversations, and like, it's really important to be able to connect with your audience. But instead, like, I'd have to like go to the bathroom and I just hide out until last call, until the bar got quiet and I could help unload equipment or whatever. And, I felt really weird about that, because I felt like, people might judge me like, oh, this guy's real standoffish. He doesn't want to talk to me. He thinks he's better than me or something like that. And that wasn't the case. I just didn't have any kind of voice,
Right.
Yeah. And it was terrible, because I love that aspect of it. I loved like connecting with people, after a show, but that was like just not an option anymore,
That's rough. That's seclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it felt weird to just like, you finish the show and you walk right off stage and you like find the bathroom stall and just hide in there until it's like quiet enough for you like go outside and go rest in the van or whatever, which worked out when Lost was on. Cause I remember we had Lost on someone's cell phone, and like, I'd watch it, I could like catch up on the seasons I missed, so I guess whenever there's like a good show on, it's not like a terrible thing now that we have the technology to watch it in the palm of our hand. But, there's no shows at all, like concert wise anyway. So I don't really have to worry about the hiding out aspect of it. So.
Yeah. How many different instruments do you play?
I just kind of play this homemade percussion stuff. I can like fumble around on a guitar. I know enough chords to, I could write a song on a guitar, but it's very rare that I do anything like that. Okay. I have a lot of people who I collaborate with that I trust, and we've been working together for a long time. So we pull the best out of each other. And even in these like strange COVID times, like we have good intuition for the goals of one another. So we're able to like collaborate via text messages and whatnot,
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having that history.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that's a big deal. I'd done a previous podcast with a friend of mine from my hometown who was in a band, and he, just talked about how the chemistry can change, how crazy the business is of just touring and going places and setting up and the behind the scenes, and it puts a lot of stress on people. So it's either gonna make you or break you,
It's brutal, man. Like I said, I'm 42 years old, and the Guns N' Roses music videos that I saw when I was like 13 didn't prepare you for like carrying equipment or like ridiculously long, treacherous drives through like inclement weather. The first tour we did, we played this gig we played a gig in Flagstaff, and there was a snowstorm. Okay, I'm gonna rewind. It was New Year's Day, which is the worst day to play a gig because everyone's hungover and no one wants to go out because it's New Year's Day.
Right.
But we got this gig at the Orpheum Theater, which is this huge, beautiful theater in Flagstaff, Arizona. So I think it holds like 500 people, but we were able to get 23 people out. This was our first tour ever. This is like 20 years ago. So when there's 23 people, and I remember 23 exactly because I could count them from the stage, and they weren't all sit in a cluster together to make it feel like 23 people. It felt like, 23 people in a theater of 500, spaces, just like constellations of people just spread out through like the atmosphere,
Yeah.
So that was like the first gig of this tour. And then there was this crazy snowstorm and we had to leave for Breckenridge at like 5 a.m. the next morning. And I remember that night because I couldn't sleep at all. And I wound up watching some stupid movie called Van Helsing because the keyboardist, Josh, would put on like dumb movies and fall asleep to them. But if I start a movie, I have to finish it, no matter how dumb it is. Like, I got to know like how it ends. Otherwise I won't be able to sleep. So no matter what, I wasn't going to sleep. So I stayed up watching Van Helsing until we had to leave. And we couldn't leave immediately because a tree had fallen and blocked in our 3 vehicles. Because this is when we first started. So we were in a caravan. So we had to move this tree, drive through an ice storm to Breckenridge, where there were just like car carcasses scattered all along the highway, all the way there. It's a brutal drive. I think it took us like 15 hours. And we wound up like getting to this gig just in time. And we had to play. And it was like the weirdest gig. We had to load in up a flight of stairs that was like covered in ice, treacherous load in. We get in there and the place is packed with all these students from a Texas university that had a ski package that like their university booked out in Breckenridge. So it was just this weird room filled with Texans. And like that band, we did these real like kind of socio-political like protest songs for this like bar full of drunk Texans in Breckenridge. Weird. And we had to play 3-hour-long sets. Brutal. So like that was a brutal night. We get done at like 1:30 and then we're driving. We still had a hike to go because Josh's brother has a house in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. So we drove to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and we get about like 15 minutes from his brother's house. And there's a tunnel that you have to go through and a truck overturns in the tunnel. So we get stuck for like an additional, I think 9 hours in a snowstorm in our cars. This is like day 2 of the tour, and I was just like, oh, so touring's like this like I never saw this Motley Crue video, like where was that?
Yeah, it's like, so you want to do this. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that can happen.
Yeah, for sure. And like from my vantage point at that time, I was like, so 100% of the time that you tour, like this is how it is, And I remember even like down to the last gig we had on that tour, we opened for Digital Underground, which like, man, when I was in 7th or 8th grade, that would have been like the most exciting thing in the world, And it was still kind of exciting. Like I was probably like 22, 23 at this point, So we were playing with Shock G and Humpty Hump, and like the whole thing. And but at the same time, we were playing in Denver. It was the last gig tour. And we were all ready to go home because it was like a brutal, week-long tour. And we were going to leave straight from that gig. And we were done with our set at like, 10 p.m. or something like that. And we were ready to hit the road. But Shock G was like, hey, we were supposed to have a keyboard rented. But like the rental place was closed or something was wrong with the keyboard, whatever it was. He's like, I'll give your keyboard is $50 if we can use this keyboard. And Josh was like, yeah, I'll take $50, because like it's funny, because back then we were young, man, like $50, that was a big deal. And then the rest of us are like, man, fuck you, Josh. Like, you better split that up with us or something, And
Right.
Josh puts the 50 in his pocket. It's like, all right, whatever, you know.
Negotiate. You could have got at least a couple hundred.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go watch Van Helsing and fall asleep. And I'm just like, all right. So we had to stay until their set was over. And for some reason, this bar we were playing at, it was called Cervantes Masterpiece Theater or something like that, or Cervantes Theater, whatever. But this bar, it was kind of in like the ghetto, and they could just do whatever they wanted. So they didn't have like any kind of curfew. So that band played till like 2:30 in the morning,
Oh
and
my
he
God.
never played the keyboard until like the last song. And I swear to God, he played like something like, you know, like, we're all right, we're done, you know. And he just needed the keyboard to do that. And we were all like, man, I hate you, Josh. Like, and we
That
had to
was
drive
not
straight,
worth $50.
yeah, straight from Denver to San Diego in
Oh,
some kind of snowstorm, you know, the whole time. And that was, and the funny thing is I kept touring for like another, you know, 15 years after that. That wasn't enough to deter me, although it definitely should have been.
so what is it? What is it about touring for you that keeps you going through all the bullshit?
Oh, I'll be honest, absolutely nothing anymore, man. You couldn't get me out there to save my life, you know.
Right.
I'm
Not
like, now that I got
like
this
when you were
project,
doing
you know, there's something about when you're making music,
it.
and you're playing live, and the audience is into it, and the audience is basically like a member of the band that's like feeding you with energy that you're responding to, you know. Like the best shows that we've had were like, you know, ecstatic in this kind of energy and this frenzy that like a band could reach, just communicating really well with each other. And like there's nothing that feels as good as that. That's like an incredible feeling, you know. That's worth like an 18-hour drive starting at 2:30 in the morning after you hear Humpty Hump, you know. um yeah, like I've done some pretty crazy things to get into those positions, and they're great positions to be in, you know. For me at this point in my life, like I can kind of I can get that kind of joy and gratification like differently creatively still, you know. And it's like writing a good song, you know, like just coming up with the right lyric to finish off a song, you know, the right production. That's the kind of thing that kind of puts me in the right place now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, with now where you're at, how did this whole collaboration thing come together? Was it a mix of like a bunch of different people talking about it, or were you like, hey, I'm reaching out to everybody and like, you know, talking to your mom about what you wanted to do with the watercolors and stuff like
It's funny because the mom thing, like like my mom and I have done a few projects together.
that? Uh-huh.
Um, I did this record called Big Sur that we did a kind of pre-release a while ago, and like sold out of them. So we're going to officially release it, I think, in like September or this fall. It's coming out. But it's this like beautiful jazz album that's kind of this throwback to like a kind of Billie Holiday, but with a little bit of psychedelic element to it. Anyway, my mom did watercolor paintings for each song on that album, and we did a book that comes along with the initial CD. And we've done a few calendars where she did artwork and I wrote like poetry to the artwork, you know. And we've always talked about like doing more collaboration. But like part of the pandemic, you know, my mom's 73 years old, so she's in like the higher risk population, you know, and she takes this very, very serious.
Yeah.
So she's home, you know, she's not really trying to be out in the elements. And when she does, she's like, you know, real dexterous with her backflips, avoiding people and stuff. You know, she's not trying to, you know, test this out at all, you know.
I don't blame you.
So I was like, this is a good project that'll like keep her busy, keep her mind occupied, you know, like, because these are hard times, you know. And you know, it's hard to fill that space, you know, sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, you know, you're gonna have to do 100 paintings, you know. And really, like, it winds up being like 300 paintings, because, you know, just like me, like I write a few songs for every song that you wind up hearing. There's like several that are written that just don't get fully fleshed out, you know. Or like a singer doesn't, or passes on it or whatever, you know. You just have to have a bunch in the barrel. And my mom, does a number of paintings for each one just to make sure that like I'll pick one or the singer's happy or everybody's happy. But so yeah, it was real easy to get her involved. Like I knew that right out the gate. The funny thing is like my initial idea was like much more ambitious. I wanted to do 300, I want to do a song every day. Cause that's the pace I was at. I was writing a song every day. I'm like, if I could get people to like do a version of one like every day, that would be really, really cool, kind of ambitious project. And I talked to this one singer that I was working with, and he's like, dude, you're crazy. Are you kidding me? He's like, like you'll exhaust yourself and no one wants to hear 365 of your songs, and I'm like, it's all right. Fair enough. Like I take your point, like that's a bit much.
Yeah, because plus working with people and schedules and all kinds of that.
Oh,
that would have been a shit show.
Yeah, and I'm doing 2 a week, and for a year, and it's a nightmare. I mean, it's not a nightmare. It's great. It's like awesome, but like I don't like getting up people's ass, with like due dates and stuff like that, and it's like not my nature,
Right.
But then like to stay on pace, and I do a clockwork every Monday and Thursday. I have a short story and a song and a piece of artwork ready, so I have to like, musicians are like, just by nature, a lot of us are kind of like a little flighty, we go by our own kind of set of organization and rules, and I like, that's how I've always been. Yeah. So it's, I don't find fault in it at all. But now all of a sudden I'm like the enforcer who's got to be like, and the funny thing is a lot of the times it's like musicians who have like elevated their career higher than I have. So I feel like, I'm like, what grounds do I have to like get up this dude's ass about, like getting me this song? I'm like, he's working with Run the Jewels right now or something like that, because I've been fortunate to have some friends like, establish themselves in this industry, So, but I try to be polite with my getting up people's ass kind of way, very polite. I'm like, hey, did you see the new episode of such and such? Oh, by the way, how's that song you're working on coming along? Where we at with that?
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
Definitely learned about other people's schedules by doing this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure, man.
Switch things around, and life happens to everybody, so you never know.
Especially this year.
Yeah, especially this year.
A lot of life happening.
What's that?
A lot of life happening.
A lot of life is continuing to happen. We're gonna figure it out. We gotta figure it out. I am curious about your creative process and what it was, or actually how it's been influenced by COVID, because that's a lot of writing, man, and it really speaks to doing something you're passionate about, because it's like it just keeps coming to you is what it sounds like. So like, what do you do or do you have a process? Is it something that you have something set in stone that you do, or just kind of allow it to flow?
I think I have like 50 different processes, just to make sure it actually like happens, because sometimes sometimes it's like an assignment, where I'm like, all right, I got to sit down and like do this, like my preference is that it's just like a natural, organic, unforced occurrence, where I'm like driving down the street and I see some stimuli that's like, all right, this is, I just need one line, the rest of the song is really easy. I just need like the first line. And, my girl and I just took a trip to Big Sur in Yosemite, and that was great. I found all kinds of inspiration there. There was just like real free flowing, natural, wonderful, like the best songs, Yeah. And then I got back from like taking a week off, and I was like, oh shit, dude, I got to get back on schedule. Like I need to get, I'll be like writing at the red lights when I'm driving, just to like keep on top of it. But, a lot of it is like, I listen to music, get ideas, get inspiration. You know, I'll study a person's voice, you know, and I'll ask what they're listening to, what are some of their influences, and I'll just like kind of immerse myself in that vantage point for a few hours, and then try to think. That's the like easier part about it, is that I'm not just writing things that like I would naturally think. I try to write things that like they might think or that might sound good on their voice, you know, so that kind of gets me
Wow.
out of being like super repetitive with things that I write, you know?
Yeah. That's like super thoughtful though. Like there's a very interesting approach to that. That's cool.
Well, it's got to, because like, you know, if you're writing lyrics for like another vocalist, it's got to sound, it'll sound disingenuous. You know what I mean? If it's not right for the voice, you know,
Yeah.
it'll sound like they're singing your song, and you want it to sound like they're singing their song, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool, man. Using what's around you. I mean, it's noticing what's going on. A lot of times there's inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Even in the malevolent stuff that happens, you know? And that's
Absolutely.
the other thing that like I really like about this project is like, you know, I've been in bands, and like when you're in a band, you write a song,
Hmm.
and then you bring it to the band, and the band might like the song or they might not. So you might have to write another song, and you bring it to the band, and they'll rehearse that song, and then they'll play it out live a few times, and then we'll record it, and then we'll do a horn section and get a horn arrangement, or we'll do some strings, and you know, we produce it. And you know, by the time the album or you know the song comes out on a record, you know, sometimes a year to 2 years have passed. But if you know, I'm doing this project where some of the songs are a little more involved, you know, like the last song we mixed had like 9 string parts and 9 vocal parts, you know, and a keyboard and a guitar and bass. And some songs are just an acoustic guitar and vocals. But like creating stuff this way allows you to be very reactionary, you
Yeah.
know, like you can write something based on something you read in the news that week, or something that happened to you personally that week, and you know, you can turn it around pretty quickly and retain a certain amount of relevance that can get lost in the long term creative process, or the long form creative process. So it's interesting to be writing and releasing things this way, you know,
Yeah.
especially in a year like this where there's just so much to constantly react to.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
much so. Um, are you ever able to shut it off?
Yeah, when we watch, my girl and I are watching Better Call Saul right now. So
You
we
got what?
watch Better Call Saul. What's that?
What is it called?
Oh, Better Call Saul.
Better
The
Call Saul.
Yeah, the Breaking Bad prequel.
Got
So I
Gotcha.
can shut it. I
That's
shut it down. Yeah,
that's your time where you're just like, you know what? I'm not thinking about shit.
yeah. Well, actually, you know, my lady, she's got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. You know, and you know, like the other night I wrote a song that I was really happy with, and it was just straight from, you know, saying goodnight to the 3-year-old, and just like, and it was like a hopeful song. It was funny because it was a song that it started out like not very hopeful, and then like I just saw something in his little smile that like made me feel pretty good about the world and the future, and you know, so. But like generally speaking, when I'm like hanging out with the children, you know, like I try to put my phone away, you know,
Mm,
and try to make it like that's the focal point, you know, because like it's important. You gotta go out and like gather experiences, and then you make a time to like reflect on them, and put pen to paper.
yeah. Reflection is so huge. If you never get away from it, you never have a break, you never have a time where you're just pausing for a minute, like you can't see it for what it is.
Right, for sure. So yeah, I turn it off all the time, but like it's funny. Like I was telling my keyboardist, like I have these monthly like panic attacks where I'm like, right now I'm like 8 songs ahead of the game, which
Hmm.
is at 2 songs a week. I'm like a month ahead, you know? but like I want to kind of be 2 months ahead at all times with
Yeah.
like where songs are mixed and stuff, and then I don't have these panic attacks,
Yeah.
where I have this like list of all these people I need to contact, my wrangling list, and then I have a list of like, it's just it's a lot of work is all. And I run the website and all that stuff too. So yeah, today was my panic day where I'm like, oh man, I gotta get ahead again, so I gotta go out and work on some songs.
Yeah. Man, you got a whole process. You even got panic time built in.
Yeah, for sure. Once a month I allow myself like extreme panic for 24 hours.
That's
Or
that's to me that's oddly healthy.
yeah,
Though.
project related panic. I have other panics too, just 2020 panics. That's like every 17 minutes kind of thing.
Yeah, those panics every once in a while. You have to make sure that your phone is down and all the media is off. It's like, all right, this is just going to spiral into some shit. What's do you have something on the horizon after this current project is done that you're looking for, or looking to do, or like what's the future holding for you at this point?
I think one of the cool things is out of this project, I think I'm going to get some albums to record. I've been working with the singer Mara Kay and her boyfriend, who's a good friend of mine named Tim McNally. And we've been, we've released 2 songs through the project, but I think by the end of it, we're probably going to wind up having to do an album together, just based on how good everything's been going,
Yeah.
There's another singer named Jen Grinnell's. She's done 3 songs for the project. I don't even know if she knows this yet, but I think we have to do a record together because they're really rad songs. So if she listens to this podcast, she might find out that we're going to do an album together. That's just got to happen. So I think it's going to open up little windows like that, where like there's some of these folks that I've been working with I've never even met. I worked with a guy named Brad Barr, who has a band called the Barr Brothers, who's like a pretty successful band. He's friends with a friend of mine named Nathan Moore, who I had worked on a bunch of songs with. And Brad was like gracious enough to do a song, and then when he posted it, a friend of his that he collaborated with, I think in college, hit me up and was like, "Hey, I like your project. I want to do a song." And we wrote a song together. I've never met her. Super kind, sweet person. We talked on the phone once, wrote this beautiful song. And it's going to come out. And that's like, like when this project is like working at its best, it's things like that can happen that would have never happened otherwise, that are like really, really interesting,
Yeah.
And that, and like it forcing me to, I've been writing some country western songs, for a couple of different folks. And I love like old country music, but I've never had a chance to like partake in it before, so just getting to like kind of study that and try to write something kind of faithful to the roots, and at the same time looking forward, has been great.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, like like I'm a Black male in America, writing all these different genres and songs, where like this is the first time, I've really put myself out there as a songwriter, even though I've written songs in a lot of bands before, but it was always more like behind the scenes, and I think it's interesting to have like that perspective into these songs,
Yeah. Does that feel comfortable, or does that feel a little like, oh my gosh?
Yeah, it's what I do, so it's always felt comfortable. In fact, I just said it because it just popped into my head, that it's probably, there's definitely there's Charlie Pride was a Black country musician, and I think Darius Rucker is very successful. It's not like a first or anything like that, but it's not like the usual suspect,
Oh,
behind
I
those songs.
was just meaning from the standpoint of getting to a place where you're just like stepping into, no, I'm a songwriter.
Yeah, no, it's like I've always wanted to be, like the way like a skilled guitar player can kind of come into any session
Yeah.
and have something to offer, or a piano player, like that's what I do. I write lyrics, you
Yeah.
know, and I want to be able to write lyrics for any song imaginable and just write what the song needs. And, you know, if this project is anything, it's like great practice to like, you know, I want to be a master at that. Like, I don't want to just be like an average songwriter. Like, I want to be the best that I possibly can be. And this is like a great way to like get there, you know, because it's like, you know, when you hear the project, we're 23 songs into it. It's all over the place. You know, there's soul songs, there's like old time jazz songs, there's folk songs, there's Americana, country, rock and roll, kind of garage rock. Um, you know, it's all over the place, psychedelic stuff. Like, and the one common ingredient is me.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Where can people find this? Like, where can people find the project and everything that you've got going on?
So the website is Alfred Howard Writes. That's WRITES, alfredhowardwrites.com. And, you know, I'm also on Bandcamp under Alfred Howard Writes Songs with Friends. You know, I'll send you over some links if you want to post them as well. But if you just go there, there's a streaming page where you can check out all the music. In the store, you can subscribe to the site. And if you subscribe, you'll get 2 short stories a week, 2 pieces of art a week, and 2 songs. And you'll get, you know, the back catalog as well. You'll get the first 23 songs too.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And all the artwork too.
And all the artwork. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's like it's ambitious, you know, and I'm proud of that, you know. Like even when I backed down from my initial you know, a song every day for a year, and I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is like ambitious enough. Like now that I'm inside of it, it's like I can honestly say it's ambitious enough.
Yeah, yeah, man. Once you start getting into like anything that involves other people, or just any sort of planning, or just checking off boxes one by one, you never truly realize all the stuff that goes into it until you do it.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. Because every week when I'm putting these songs up, I got to put a video together. I got to put the art in the store. Got to put the art on the art page. Got to put the art in Bandcamp, song in Bandcamp, song in store. Write the story. You know, update the email list. And these are just like the first things that are coming to mind. Like it's a long list of things that like have to happen to make sure this thing keeps like running on clockwork. And I also have to write the songs and, you know, get them mixed and everything too. So it's
Yeah.
a lot.
And it's like everything that's behind the website. Like people will go to the website and they'll see a song, and it's just like, I don't know that a ton of people understand like everything that goes into it. And I'm hoping with your explanation about like what goes into some of this stuff, it's just like, you know, there's a lot that goes into creating something, anything really. It
Yeah.
is what it seems like at the end of the day. And you know, for every one of those songs, it's just like there's a lot of work that went into each one. And like you said before, there's songs that will never make it because you wrote them and then they're not out.
Yeah.
And it's
Doesn't
all
take much
part of
for
the
a
process.
song to not materialize. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, man. I think this is a very cool thing that you're doing during this time. I'm enjoying some of the creativity that I've been seeing out there. Like I know that there's a lot of negativity out there, but I think it's also sparking a lot of creativity as well.
Dude, I think the best art that's ever made comes out of crisis and chaos and turmoil. And
Yeah.
if this year has been anything, it's that holy malevolent trinity, you know. But like great artists adapt, and you know they make great art in troubled times. So yeah, you know, like I hate that these things happen to create like really beautiful things, but I'm looking forward to all the beauty because, you know, it's a balance and we need all of it to kind of just get through these days.
Yes, we do. Well, is there anything else that we didn't touch on before we wrap this thing up that you wanted to let people know about, or just anything in general?
I feel pretty good, man. I feel that was pretty comprehensive. Like I would love for people to hear the music. So, please go to the website, and we got the Spotify links on the front page that have like the first 20 songs on them. So give it a listen, see if you enjoy it. And if it is, and you have the means, like, support it. And if it's something you enjoy and you don't have the means, just shoot me an email and I'll sign you up for a free subscription. I'm hoping at the end of the day it balances out, but people need music right now. People need art. So if I can help in that department, then that's my purpose.
Awesome, man. Well, I think it's a good purpose, and I appreciate you taking out some time today to do this. Keep up the good work, and yeah, we're out of here.
Awesome. Hey, pleasure chat, man.
Yeah,
Be good.
see you.